It started like any other normal day in our peaceful suburban neighborhood. But I never could have imagined that a knock on my door would shatter everything I thought I knew about my home, my neighbors, and the very people we trusted to protect us. We were always the kind of family that kept to ourselves, living in a well-established community governed by the Homeowners Association, HOA. The HOA had always seemed like a harmless figure, offering guidance on maintaining property values, organizing the occasional neighborhood event, and ensuring the rules were followed. Simple, right? We never imagined that the organization we trusted to keep our neighborhood safe could harbor a dark, twisted secret. It was a Wednesday afternoon when things first started to feel off. I was at home, just wrapping up my work for the day, when I heard the doorbell ring. At first, I thought nothing of it. People stopped by, occasionally salesmen, a neighbor asking for sugar, or the delivery guy with a package. But the moment I opened that door, everything changed. Standing there, in front of me, were two men. Their uniforms were official-looking, their expressions cold, and their demeanor was anything but friendly. The men introduced themselves as police officers, here to conduct a routine welfare check for the HOA. Now, I'd heard of things like this happening before, checkups to ensure safety, that everything was up to code, but there was something about the way they spoke that immediately felt wrong. They didn't seem like regular cops. They didn't have the right tone, the right authority, or the right equipment. Before I could ask more questions, the taller one pushed forward, demanding entry. "We need to inspect your property," he said, his voice firm and urgent. The look in his eyes was unsettling. The way he casually dropped the words "welfare check" without any explanation felt rehearsed, like it was a cover for something far more dangerous. Instinctively, I stepped back, confused and alarmed. I knew I wasn't going to let them in. Something was wrong here. "Sorry," I said, my voice steady despite the growing anxiety in my chest. "I wasn't informed about any inspection. Can you provide me with some kind of documentation or proof?" That's when they pulled out something that looked like an official letter, but something about it seemed off. The letter was poorly printed, with the HOAS logo barely visible. A sudden realization hit me like a punch to the gut. These weren't real cops. These were imposters. They were trying to get into my home under false pretenses, but I wasn't going to let them. "I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave," I said, my voice gaining strength. They didn't argue. Instead, they stepped back and exchanged a quick glance. It was as if this wasn't part of their plan. They weren't prepared for me to stand my ground. After a tense moment, they left, but the unease that settled over me remained. Something wasn't right. I'd seen enough TV crime shows to know that something shady was happening right under our noses. The HOA, the police impersonators, it all felt wrong. But why? What were they after? I called my wife immediately. She had always been the logical one, the one who could make sense of things when I couldn't. "You won't believe what just happened," I told her. "Some guys claiming to be police showed up at our door, but they weren't real cops. They were sent by the HOA. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head. She'd always had a knack for digging into things that didn't add up. And this time, she wasn't about to sit back and let it slide. "I'll take care of it," she said. "I'll start looking into the HOA. There's something off about this, and I don't like it." I hung up the phone, feeling both relieved and worried. My wife was sharp, no doubt about it, but what she was about to uncover would change everything. That night, after dinner, I saw her sitting at the kitchen table, her laptop open, a stack of papers next to her. "I've got something," she said, barely looking up from her screen. "That the HOA has been involved in some shady business for years. They've been pushing aggressive policies, ones that seem to benefit certain members of the community. Not all of us." She showed me articles, legal documents, and even court records that detailed complaints and lawsuits filed against the HOA. There were stories of residents being harassed, of property damage, of threats that no one had ever properly investigated. But nothing had ever made it into the local news. It was as if the HOA's actions were somehow hidden in plain sight, protected by a web of lies. Then, she told me something that sent a chill down my spine. The HOA didn't hiring fake cops. Not just here, but in other neighborhoods too. They've been using these fake officers to intimidate residents who are pushing back against their rules. This isn't just about property maintenance anymore. This is about control. The pieces were finally falling into place. The fake cops weren't just a random occurrence, they were part of a bigger scheme. But why? Why would an HOA, of all things, go this far? What were they hiding, and how deep did this rabbit hole go? As my wife continued her investigation, it became clear that we were standing on the edge of something far more dangerous than we'd ever imagined. And it wasn't just about protecting our home anymore, it was about exposing a hidden agenda, one that could shake the foundation of the very community we thought we knew. The following morning, my wife had an idea. She would go undercover. She would dig deeper into the HOA's operations, track down any connections they had with local law enforcement, and find out exactly what they were hiding. It was a risk, but it was the only way forward. We needed to know who was behind this, and why they would go to such extreme lengths to maintain control. I couldn't help but admire her determination. She was fearless, and that's exactly what we needed right now, but little did we know that the worst was yet to come. That same day, after my wife had left for her undercover work, the worst possible thing happened. The fake cops returned, and this time they weren't knocking. They were smashing the door down. The door was gone before I could even react. One moment, I was standing in the living room, staring at the space where my wife had just been standing. The next, I heard the deafening crash of wood splintering under force. My heart leaped into my throat, and I ran toward the front door without thinking. It was too late to do anything but react. I could hear the men outside shouting, their words muffled by the thick wood of the door they were battering down. "Get inside." One of them yelled, "Move." The unmistakable sound of boots pounding against the floor followed as they tore their way through our house. My mind raced. What was happening? Why were they doing this? The HOA, the fake cops, it was all moving faster than I could process. It seemed like a nightmare, but it was real. Too real. I grabbed my phone and tried to call my wife. No answer. I tried again, my fingers trembling with panic. Still, nothing. I cursed under my breath. Whatever was happening, I needed to get out of there and figure out how to stop it. Just as I was about to bolt for the back door, a voice called from the hallway. "Stay down. Don't move." I froze. I could hear footsteps getting closer. Then I saw the two fake cops standing in the doorway of the living room. They had broken in just like that. And now they were here, looking at me like I was the criminal. One of them stepped forward, his face cold and emotionless, his hands gripping a baton. He had the same look as the men before, nothing official, nothing that would scream law enforcement. These guys weren't cops. They weren't anything like cops. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded, standing my ground despite the panic coursing through me. "Who sent you?" The taller one just smiled. "We were told to make sure you didn't talk," he said, his voice dripping with menace. "What do you mean? Make sure I don't talk?" I asked, my confusion turning into fury. "You're not cops. What is this? Why are you doing this to my family?" The man laughed a low, sinister sound. "You should have stayed quiet. You should have stayed in your place." Before I could respond, I heard another voice from behind them. "Enough." I turned around in shock to see a third man standing in the doorway. This one dressed in a sharply tailored suit, his posture poised and commanding. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the chaos around us. "Is this the man?" he asked, addressing the two fake cops. "Yes, sir," the taller one replied. "He's the one who's been making noise. He's been asking too many questions." The man in the suit walked forward, a calm smile playing on his lips. "I suppose you were right to be curious, Mr. Harris," he said, his voice smooth, almost like silk. "But now, I think we've reached the point where you'll understand curiosity can be dangerous." I could hardly believe my ears. This wasn't just a break-in. This was a calculated attack. The HOA had crossed a line from bullying to outright intimidation. But what was their goal? What were they trying to hide? "Who are you?" I demanded. "What do you want from me?" The man in the suit paused and glanced around the room. He clearly enjoyed the power he held in this moment. "It's not about what I want from you, Mr. Harris," he said, his tone never rising above a calm, almost soothing level. "It's about what you're willing to do for us." His words hung in the air like a bad omen. Whatever it was they were asking for, it was nothing good. As he spoke, something clicked in my mind. My wife. She had gone undercover, digging into the HOA's activities. She had warned me something like this might happen. She had been working tirelessly to uncover the truth, and now I realized she had gone too far. I rushed to the back of the house, trying to stay low and out of sight, but I wasn't fast enough. One of the fake cops spotted me. He shoved me to the ground with a force that left me gasping for breath. "Where do you think you're going?" he growled, pressing his knee into my back. I struggled, trying to break free, but there was no way out. I was trapped. "I don't know what you're trying to do, but it's not going to work," I spat. "You can't silence me." The man in the suit walked over slowly, crouching beside me as I lay on the floor, unable to move. His cold eyes stared down at me with an unsettling calmness. "You misunderstand, Mr. Harris. We don't need to silence you. We need to make you understand." He leaned in closer. "We've been watching you. Your wife's investigation. It's more than just a curiosity. It's a problem. And we can't have problems." I felt my heart drop into my stomach. My wife's investigation, everything she had uncovered, it was more dangerous than I realized. We were no longer dealing with petty neighborhood politics. This was something far more sinister. He stood up, turning to the fake cops. "Take him to the car." Without another word, they dragged me out of the house and toward a black van parked in the driveway. The door was slammed shut behind me, and I was thrown into the back seat. The sound of the engine roaring to life drowned out all other noise. I didn't know where they were taking me, but I knew one thing for sure. My life had just been turned upside down. After what felt like an eternity, the van came to a screeching halt. The door swung open, and I was roughly pulled out, still groggy and disoriented from the rough ride. My hands were bound tightly behind my back, and I was led down a dimly lit hallway that smelled of mildew and old wood. The chill in the air cut through my shirt, and I could feel every inch of my body tense up. My heart raced in my chest. I had no idea what was going on, but one thing was certain: the HOA wasn't playing around anymore. The man in the suit, who I now recognized as the ringleader, walked ahead, his polished shoes clicking against the concrete floor. The sound echoed through the narrow corridor. His posture was poised and confident, like someone who is used to being in control. "This is where the real work begins, Mr. Harris," he said, turning to face me. "You've seen how far we'll go to protect our interests. But there's more you don't know. Much more." His words sent a chill down my spine. I'd thought I was in over my head before, but now I realized I was walking into the heart of something much darker than I'd imagined. As they forced me into a small, dimly lit room, the door slammed shut behind me, and I was left in total darkness for a few moments. The only sound was the pounding of my heartbeat and the rustling of my clothes as I tried to adjust to the situation. Then, the light flickered on. It was a harsh, blinding bulb hanging from the ceiling, casting long shadows across the room. The walls were bare, except for a few small, faded posters that looked like they hadn't been updated in years. The air was thick with the scent of stale cigarette smoke, and the floor was littered with crumbs and trash. A metal chair was placed in the center of the room, and they shoved me into it, securing my arms to the armrests. As I struggled to make sense of everything that had happened, the man in the suit stepped forward. He paced back and forth in front of me, clearly enjoying the power he held over the situation. "You've been asking too many questions, Mr. Harris," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "And now you're starting to dig into things you don't understand." I couldn't respond immediately. My mind was still reeling from the attack on my home. They had sent fake cops to smash my door. I had barely gotten out alive. And now, here I was, tied to a chair in some dark, mysterious place, about to get answers if I was lucky. "You've seen the surface of it all, the shady dealings, the harassment. But you don't know who's really pulling the strings," the man continued, his words slow and deliberate. He was toying with me, letting the fear and confusion build inside me. It was working. His gaze never left mine as he continued, his voice growing colder. "You think this is just about some neighborhood dispute? About property values and rules? No, Mr. Harris. The HOA is merely the front. The real operation goes much deeper. We're a part of a larger network, a collective of people who've been organizing for decades, and we're not about to let a few nosy residents ruin what we've built." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in. I could feel the sweat forming on the back of my neck. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. The HOA, the fake cops, the threats, they were all part of something much bigger. But what? What were they hiding? "Everything you think you know is a lie," he said finally, a cruel smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You think you've been standing up for your rights? You think you've been fighting for the truth? You're just a pawn in a game that's much bigger than you could ever imagine." I shook my head, trying to clear the fog from my brain. "What game?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "What do you want from me? Why are you doing this?" The man in the suit's expression darkened. He stopped pacing and stood still, looking down at me with a cold, calculating gaze. "It's not about what I want from you, Mr. Harris," he said, his tone even colder. "It's about what you're willing to do for us." A sense of dread flooded my chest. I had a sickening feeling that this wasn't just about intimidation or manipulation. This was about control. These people were willing to go to extreme lengths to protect their secrets, and I was being dragged deeper into their web with each passing minute. "You'll understand soon enough," he said cryptically, as if speaking to himself. "For now, though, I want to make sure you know who you're dealing with." With that, he turned and motioned to the two fake cops who had been standing silently in the corner of the room. They were as much a part of this operation as he was, just pawns in a much larger game. "Take him to the back. Let's show him the operation," he said, his voice calm, almost dismissive. The fake cops grabbed me by the arms, roughly pulling me from the chair and dragging me down another hallway. The walls here were even more grim and uninviting, with peeling paint and cracked tiles underfoot. It felt like I was walking deeper into a nightmare, and I had no idea how to wake up. Eventually, they led me to another door. This one was heavier, sturdier, as though it were meant to keep people out. The man in the suit opened it without a word and gestured for me to go inside. My legs felt like lead, but I had no choice but to step over the threshold. What I saw inside shocked me to my core. The room was full of monitors, each showing different parts of the neighborhood, every angle of the streets, every movement around the homes. It was like something out of a spy movie. The HOA wasn't just watching us, They were controlling every aspect of our lives. I turned to the man in the suit, a wave of realization washing over me. "You've been spying on all of us," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You've been watching us the whole time," he smiled, a cold, cruel smile that made my blood run cold. "Not just watching, Mr. Harris, we've been controlling. We've made sure everyone stays in line. And we'll continue to do so as long as we need to." It hit me then. The HOA wasn't just a homeowners association. It was a covert operation, a system built to manipulate and control the very people it was supposed to protect. This wasn't about rules or regulations. This was about power, and they were willing to do whatever it took to keep it. The man in the suit stepped closer to me, his voice low and threatening. "Your wife is digging into things she shouldn't. You're both going to regret this. But don't worry, Mr. Harris, you won't be alone. We'll all be in this together soon enough." As the fake cops led me out of the room, I knew I had to find a way to stop them. They had crossed a line. And now it was my turn to fight back. The days that followed were filled with tension and fear. Each passing hour felt like an eternity as I struggled to make sense of everything. My wife's undercover investigation had led us down a dangerous path, one that was slowly unraveling a truth I wasn't ready to face. But we couldn't stop now. Whatever the HOA was hiding, it was far bigger than we ever imagined, and I knew my wife's involvement had placed both of us in grave danger. I had tried calling her several times, but every call went straight to voicemail. She had been deep into her investigation, and I feared the worst. What if they'd found her? What if they'd silenced her the way they planned to silence me? The man in the suit had made it clear this wasn't just about intimidation anymore. This was a full-on war. The HOA wasn't just an organization of nosy neighbors enforcing rules. No. This was a tightly woven network of power-hungry individuals who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. And they would use anything at their disposal to keep their grip on the neighborhood, on the people, and on the truth. That night, everything would come to a head. I sat in the small, dimly lit room they had placed me in, waiting for something, anything to happen. My mind raced with possibilities, and the fear of not knowing what was coming next gnawed at me. How much longer could we keep this up? How much longer could my wife continue her investigation without them finding out? What would they do if they got their hands on her? I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to get out. I needed to find her and end this nightmare. But just as I stood up, preparing to make my move, I heard it. A loud bang. My heart stopped in my chest. The sound echoed through the building, followed by more rapid pounding. The unmistakable sound of someone or something slamming against the door. It was too loud, too violent to be anything but deliberate. They were here. My first instinct was to run, to hide, to find some way to protect myself from whatever they were planning next. But as I peered out of the small window in the corner of the room, my blood ran cold. A group of men dressed in black tactical gear was approaching. The dim lights flickered off the sheen of their vests as they moved with military precision. They weren't pretending to be cops this time. They were here for something much more dangerous, and I was standing right in their path. Before I could react, the door to the room burst open, and two of the men charged in. They grabbed me by the arms and shoved me toward the door, forcing me down the hallway. My mind raced, my thoughts a blur as I tried to make sense of everything that was happening. Why were they here? What had changed? Why now? The leader of the group, the man who had spoken so calmly to me before, walked behind us, his presence looming like a shadow. He gave no orders, but his men obeyed him without hesitation. His silence only made my fear grow. Whatever he had planned, it was bigger than anything I had prepared for. We were taken outside into the cold night air. The streets were eerily quiet, with only the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. It felt like time had frozen. But then I heard another sound, coming from the direction of my house. Another knock. This time, it was louder, more forceful, and followed by an unmistakable sound, a door being kicked in. My stomach dropped. They were attacking my home. They were breaking in again. Only this time, it wasn't fake cops. They had gone too far. I struggled in the grip of the two men holding me, trying to break free. "You're making a huge mistake," I shouted. "You can't just destroy people's lives like this. What do you want from me?" The man in the suit didn't even look at me as he spoke. "It's too late for that, Mr. Harris," he said coldly. "The HOA has made its decision. Your investigation has gone too far. There's no turning back." My blood ran cold. "What have you done to my wife?" I demanded, my voice shaking with fear and anger. The man finally looked at me, his eyes cold and calculating. "She's safe for now," he said, his voice low and threatening. "But if she continues to dig into things she's not supposed to, we'll make sure she understands the consequences." The words hung in the air like a dark promise. I had no idea where my wife was or what they had done to her, but I wasn't about to let them take her down with me. I had to find a way to stop them. I had to fight back. The men in tactical gear continued dragging me toward a black van parked at the end of the driveway, the engine already running. It was a sleek, unmarked vehicle that blended in with the darkness. But as I was pushed into the back of the van, my eyes caught something that made my heart skip a beat. A figure was standing in the distance, just outside my front door. It was hard to make out in the dim light, but I could see the silhouette clearly enough. It was my wife. My heart leaped with relief and fear in equal measure. What was she doing out there? Was she safe? Was she alone? Before I could even call out to her, the door to the van slammed shut and I was thrown against the cold metal interior. My breath caught in my throat as the vehicle roared to life, speeding away from my house. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Whatever they were planning, whatever they had been hiding, I wasn't going to sit back and let them destroy everything. My wife was out there, and I would do whatever it took to get to her. The fight wasn't over, and now the stakes were higher than ever. The van sped down the winding roads, the engine roaring in the silence of the night. Every bump in the road jolted me in the back seat, the ropes around my wrists digging deeper into my skin. I had no idea where they were taking me, but wherever it was, it felt like the end of the line. I couldn't stop thinking about my wife. Was she still out there? Was she safe? Had they found her? The air in the van was thick with tension, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I needed answers. But the man in the suit had already made it clear this was no longer just about me. This was bigger than anything I could have imagined. The HOA wasn't just a group of concerned neighbors. They were part of something far darker, something that stretched deep into the fabric of the community. And now I was involved whether I liked it or not. My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of the nightmare I was living. The fake cops, the surveillance, the threats, what had they been hiding? What was the real story behind all this? And why had my wife been targeted? It didn't make sense. She'd been digging, yes, but she wasn't alone in this. I had seen the warning signs. I knew something wasn't right, but I had no idea how deep it went. As the van continued down the road, I tried to focus on the present. Whatever they had planned for me, I wasn't going down without a fight. I had no idea where my wife was or what they had done to her, but I knew I had to escape. I had to find her. We couldn't let them win. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the van came to a stop. The doors swung open and I was shoved out into the cold night. I squinted against the dim light from the building ahead of me. It looked like an old warehouse, one that had been abandoned for years. But there was something unsettling about it, something that didn't sit right. It felt like this place had been hiding secrets for a long time. The men in tactical gear surrounded me, their guns trained on me as they led me toward the entrance. I was marched inside, the cold air biting at my skin. The warehouse was dark and silent, save for the faint hum of machinery in the distance. It smelled of oil and rust, a sharp contrast to the sterile, polished environment I'd left behind. This place was a far cry from the clean suburban streets I'd once known. I was forced to stand against the wall, my arms still bound. I could feel my heart racing, every nerve in my body on high alert. The man in the suit stepped forward again, his face still as cold as ever. "You've been asking the wrong questions, Mr. Harris," he said, his voice cold, his gaze unwavering. "And now you've put your wife in the middle of this mess. You've made it personal." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "What do you want from me? What's all this about? You've been watching us. You've been controlling everything. But for what? What's your endgame?" The man didn't answer immediately. He glanced around the room as if considering something. Then he stepped closer, his face inches from mine. "You don't get it, do you?" he asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. "This isn't just about controlling the neighborhood. This is about controlling everything. People like us, we don't leave things to chance. We make our own rules, and you've disrupted the order. And now you have to pay the price." I tried to push back, but my mind was still reeling from everything. "What about the HOA? What's the real purpose in all this?" The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was cold, calculating. "The HOA is just the tip of the iceberg. You think they're the ones in charge? No, they're just the face of something far larger. We've been working in the shadows for years, pulling strings behind the scenes. This isn't about property values. This is about power, control. And now it's time for you to understand your place in all of this." My mind raced as his words sank in. This was bigger than just a group of neighbors enforcing rules. This was a secret network, an underground operation that had been controlling everything for far too long. And now, my wife and I were caught in their web. The fear was overwhelming, but I refused to back down. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me without a fight. "What are you going to do to me?" I asked, my voice shaky, but defiant. "What happens now?" The man in the suit studied me for a moment, as if deciding whether or not to answer. Finally, he spoke. "You're going to help us, Mr. Harris. You've seen too much to just walk away. And as for your wife, well, let's just say, we'll make sure she understands her place too." The mention of my wife sent a wave of panic through me. One had to get out of there. I had to find her, warn her, and stop whatever they were planning before it was too late. Before I could say anything else, the man raised a hand, signaling for the guards to take me away. I was led down another hallway, this one much colder than the last. The walls were covered in grime and the floors echoed with each step. There was no sound here, no comfort. Just the cold, empty reality of the situation I found myself in. They brought me to another room, a sterile, concrete chamber with only a single light hanging from the ceiling. It was as if they were preparing for something. What? I didn't know. But I wasn't going to wait around to find out. The guards pushed me to the ground, and I heard the door slam shut behind me. I was alone. I could feel the walls closing in, and the weight of my situation pressed down on me like a vice. I didn't know how much longer I had before they returned. But I knew one thing for sure: if I didn't escape now, I might never get another chance. With my hands still bound behind me, I surveyed the room. There had to be something. I wasn't going down without a fight. My wife needed me. The truth needed to come out. And I would do whatever it took to make sure it did. I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of strength I had left. The time to escape had come. The air in the room was thick with tension, and I could feel every inch of it. As I sat in the cold, dimly lit chamber, I tried to clear my head, focusing on the situation ahead. My hands were bound tightly behind my back, my legs sore from sitting on the hard concrete floor. The door had just slammed shut, leaving me alone in a room that seemed to echo with the ghosts of the secrets this place was hiding. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my wife. I had no idea where she was or what they'd done to her, but I knew they wouldn't stop until they silenced us both. They were trying to break me, to keep me from finding the truth. But I wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not when everything we'd fought for was so close to being uncovered. I had to keep going. I knew I couldn't stay in this room forever. So I started scanning the walls for any way out. There had to be something, some loose bolt, some crack, anything I could use to escape. But everything in the room was locked down tight, designed to keep me in. The harsh light above me flickered intermittently, and the shadows it cast made the space feel even colder. Minutes turned into hours, and still, no one came to check on me. It was almost as if they had forgotten I was here, or maybe they wanted me to stew in my own fear and desperation. I could feel my patience wearing thin, but I knew if I let my frustration take over, I'd make a mistake. I couldn't afford to make a mistake now. The door opened with a loud creak, and I snapped back to reality. 2 guards stepped into the room, their boots clanking against the floor. They didn't say a word as they approached me, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. Something was about to happen. Something big. Without a word, they grabbed me by the arms and yanked me to my feet. My body screamed in protest as they dragged me down the hallway, their grip unrelenting. My mind was spinning, trying to think of an escape plan, trying to find a way out of this nightmare. But every turn we made only took me deeper into the heart of the operation, the very place they didn't want anyone to see. Finally, they brought me to a heavy steel door that looked like it was meant to withstand a nuclear attack. The men exchanged a look before one of them punched in a code on the keypad beside the door. It clicked open, and they shoved me inside. I blinked as my eyes adjusted to the dim light. The room I was now standing in was unlike anything I had seen before. It was an operations center filled with monitors and equipment that looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. The walls were lined with screens, each one showing different parts of the neighborhood, every street, every house, every movement of the residents. It was like watching a surveillance network of a city. But it was all focused on one thing: control. I took a step forward, my mouth dry as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. This wasn't just an HOA. This was something far more dangerous. They weren't just watching us, they were controlling us. Every move, every conversation, every action we took. They had eyes everywhere, and they knew everything. The man in the suit stepped forward, his footsteps echoing as he approached me. I could feel the weight of his gaze, cold and calculating. "Welcome to the real HOA operation," he said, his voice low and calm. "This is where the magic happens." I looked at him, trying to mask the panic rising in my chest. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from us?" He smiled, a thin, mirthless smile that sent a shiver down my spine. "What we want, Mr. Harris, is simple. We want control. We want power. And we'll stop at nothing to get it. The HOA is just the beginning. We have influence in every facet of life, business, politics, law enforcement. We've been playing the long game for years." His words felt like a punch to the gut. The HOA had never been just about property maintenance and community rules. It was a cover affront for something much darker, much more insidious. These people weren't just watching from the sidelines. They were pulling the strings, manipulating the entire neighborhood like puppets. "And your wife," he continued, his gaze narrowing as he spoke, "she was getting too close. She was asking too many questions, digging into things she shouldn't have. But now she's learned what happens when you defy us. My heart raced as I tried to focus. I needed to know where she was. I had to know if she was safe. "Where is she?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "What have you done to her?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he motioned to the screens on the wall. "Your wife has been very resourceful," he said, his tone almost admiring. "She uncovered a lot, more than she should have. And now she's being dealt with." His words hit me like a sledgehammer. They were holding her. They were keeping her from me. But for how long? And what would they do to her once they were done with her? I was about to ask more when he raised a hand, cutting me off. "Enough questions, Mr. Harris. It's time for you to understand the bigger picture. The HOA isn't just a group of people. It's a machine, a carefully constructed web of control that spans cities, states, and countries. Every neighborhood is just another cog in the system. We own the property, the land, the laws, and most importantly, we own the people." He paused, letting his words sink in. My stomach churned. This wasn't just about some petty power struggle between neighbors. This was about a full-scale operation, one that had been carefully hidden from the public eye for years. And my wife and I were standing at the heart of it, whether we wanted to be or not. "But you'll understand soon enough," he continued, his voice low and ominous. "Once we're done with you, you'll see things our way. You'll realize that fighting us is pointless. And you'll do exactly as we say." The door opened again, and the guards moved forward, their faces expressionless. They grabbed me by the arms, preparing to drag me away. But this time, I wasn't going to go quietly. I wasn't going to let them control me. I had to escape. I had to get out and find my wife before they did something worse. As they pulled me toward the door, I struggled, trying to break free from their grip. My heart pounded in my chest, the adrenaline coursing through me. I had no plan, no idea how I was going to escape, but I knew one thing: I couldn't let them win. Not now. Not ever. The door slammed shut behind me, and I was plunged back into the darkness. But as I was led down the hallway, something inside me clicked. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I wasn't going to just sit back and let them take everything from me. I was going to fight back, and I was going to expose them for what they really were. As I was led down the cold, sterile hallway, the reality of what I was up against began to sink in. I had thought the HOA was just a group of overzealous neighbors enforcing rules and maintaining property values. I had no idea that it was the front for something much darker, something dangerous. I had spent years thinking I was just a regular homeowner, living in a community where things were predictable and safe. But now I understood the truth. The HOA wasn't just a group of people following rules, it was a well-oiled machine, a network of influence and control that stretched far beyond the neighborhood. And it was all about power. Power over the residents. Power over the law. Power over the truth. I had been a pawn in their game, but no longer. I wasn't going to sit back and let them win. I had to find a way out, to expose them, to stop them from continuing their reign of terror over our lives. And most importantly, I had to find my wife. I knew she was deep in this now, and if I didn't act quickly, they would silence her, just like they were trying to silence me. The guards dragged me through the compound, their grip firm and unyielding. I could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on me with every step. I was no longer just a homeowner. I was an enemy, a threat to everything they had built. And I could see the look of determination in the eyes of the men who held me. These weren't just hired thugs. They were part of a bigger plan, a plan to maintain control at all costs. We reached a small, windowless room at the end of the hall, and the door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed in the small space, and I could feel the weight of the metal walls pressing in on me. I was alone now, but not for long. I had no idea how long I had before they came back for me, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't let them break me. I scanned the room, looking for anything I could use to escape, but everything was locked down tight. There was no way out, no way to fight back. The only thing I could do was wait. Wait for the right moment. Wait for the opportunity to strike. Minutes dragged by, and my mind raced. My wife had to be out there somewhere. I had to find her. She was the key to all of this. She had uncovered the truth, and now she was the one they were after. I couldn't let them take her. I couldn't let them win. Just then, the door creaked open, and a familiar face stepped inside. It was the man in the suit, the one who had been pulling the strings behind all of this. The one who had made it clear that I was nothing more than a pawn in his game. He walked toward me, his steps measured and deliberate. "Mr. Harris," he said, his voice smooth and calm. "I trust you're beginning to understand the gravity of the situation." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My anger was boiling over, but I knew I had to keep my composure. If I let him see how afraid I was, he would have the upper hand. And that was the last thing I could afford. "We've been monitoring your every move," he continued, his voice almost condescending. "Your wife's little investigation into the HOA was a mistake. You should have never crossed us. But now it's too late." I couldn't help it. I had to know. "Where is she?" I demanded, my voice rising in anger. "What have you done to her?" The man smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives you when they know they have the power to crush you. "She's fine," he said, his tone almost too calm. "For now? For now?" I repeated, my heart pounding in my chest. "What does that mean?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "It means that if she continues to dig into things she's not supposed to, we'll have to take more drastic measures." I felt my blood boil. This wasn't just about control anymore. It was about fear. It was about intimidation. And they were using my wife to get to me. They were threatening everything I cared about, but I wasn't going to let them win. I had to stay calm. I had to think. They were underestimating me, underestimating my resolve. And that was their mistake. "I won't help you," I said, my voice steady despite the fury inside me. "I won't be your pawn. You'll never get away with this." He chuckled, a low, almost mocking sound. "Oh, Mr. Harris, you misunderstand. You don't have a choice in this. You've already seen too much. You're already too deep in our operations. There's no going back now." I was about to respond when the door opened again, and one of the guards stepped inside, his face expressionless. "The boss wants to see him," the guard said. Motioning for me to get up, I stood up slowly, trying to keep my composure. I knew that whatever was coming next, I had to be ready. But there was one thing I knew for sure. I wasn't going to let them control me. Not anymore. They led me down another hallway, deeper into the compound. The walls were lined with surveillance equipment, cameras pointed in every direction. The entire place was a fortress, a symbol of their power. It felt like they were watching my every move, waiting for me to slip up. Finally, we reached a large, reinforced door at the end of the hallway. The guard punched in a code, and the door slid open with a hiss. I was pushed inside, and the door slammed shut behind me. The room was enormous, with a long table at the center. At the head of the table sat a man I hadn't seen before, an older man, dressed in a crisp, dark suit. His eyes were cold and calculating, and he studied me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Mr. Harris," he said, his voice smooth and measured. "I've been expecting you." I didn't speak. I didn't know what to say, but I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I was surrounded. I was trapped. But I wasn't going to let them break me. "Please, have a seat," the man said, motioning to the chair across from him. We have a lot to discuss. I sat down, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what he wanted, but I knew one thing. Whatever it was, I wasn't going to make it easy for him. He leaned forward, folding his hands in front of him. We're at a crossroads, Mr. Harris. You and your wife have become inconvenient to us. But it doesn't have to end badly for you. If you cooperate, if you do what we say, we can make this go away. We can make all of this disappear. I stared at him, refusing to show any sign of weakness. And if I don't cooperate, his smile was cold and unforgiving. Then your wife's fate will be sealed. I couldn't breathe. They were using her as leverage, and they knew it. They were threatening her to get to me, but I wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not when we were this close to exposing the truth. I won't do what you want, I said, my voice firm. I won't help you destroy people's lives. He leaned back in his chair, considering my words. We'll see about that, he said coldly. You have no idea what we're capable of. I was about to respond to the man's chilling words when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something that stopped me cold. One of the guards standing by the door shifted slightly, their gaze lingering on me, but it wasn't the usual cold indifference I had seen from the other men. There was something different this time, something more sympathetic. It lasted only a moment. But in that split second, I realized that not everyone in this operation was fully committed to the cause. Some of them were just following orders. Some of them didn't believe in what they were doing. I didn't know if this was an opportunity or a trick, but I had to act quickly. I stayed silent, pretending to study the man in the suit. I was looking for any crack in his composure, any sign that I could exploit. But in that brief moment of distraction, I saw something else, something that caught my attention. The guard who had given me that look shifted slightly, his hand brushing the small earpiece nestled behind his ear. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but it was enough. A faint movement, a slight tension in his posture. He was waiting for something, and I couldn't ignore it. I cleared my throat, trying to regain my composure. You really think you can control everything? I asked, my voice steady but laced with the edge of defiance. The world doesn't work that way. People fight back. They resist. The man in the suit smiled, his expression as cold as ever. Oh, Mr. Harris, you still don't get it, do you? You're fighting a battle that's already been won. We've seen to it that resistance doesn't have a chance. People like you, people who think they can make a difference, are the ones who get trampled. This is the way the world works now. You're simply too late. His words were meant to intimidate, to make me believe that I had no power, that my efforts were futile. But I wasn't going to let him win. Not without a fight. I'm not backing down, I said firmly. And neither is my wife. At the mention of my wife, the man's expression faltered, but only for a fraction of a second. His calm demeanor slipped just enough to reveal the slightest hint of irritation, which only fueled my determination. We've already taken care of her, he said, his tone flat, but there was something underneath the surface. A hint of hesitation. She's no longer a problem. I felt my blood run cold. What have you done to her? I demanded, standing up from my chair. The guards immediately stepped forward, but I didn't care. The thought of what they might be doing to her was unbearable. The man in the suit raised his hand, signaling the guards to stand down. She's fine, he said with a smirk. For now. But her fate is in your hands. You can choose to cooperate, and we'll let her go. Or you can refuse, and we'll make sure she never walks free again. The room was suffocating. His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't lose her. I couldn't, but I couldn't give in to these people either. Then the unexpected happened. The guard who had been watching me, the one who had given me that brief, sympathetic look, stepped forward, breaking the silence in the room. Sir, the guard said, his voice low, hesitant. "I think we should reconsider." The man in the suit turned slowly to face him, a flash of irritation crossing his face. "What did you say?" he asked, his tone icy. The guard swallowed, but his voice remained steady. "Maybe we don't need to go this far. This is wrong. We've gone too far already." For a moment, everything was still. The guards, the man in the suit, and I were all frozen in place as if we were caught in some kind of tense standoff. The guard's words hung in the air, thick with the weight of what he was implying. The man in the suit stared at him for a long moment. "What are you suggesting?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. The guard hesitated, but then spoke again, this time more resolutely. "We've been crossing lines, sir. We're not just dealing with property disputes anymore. This is bigger than just enforcing rules. What we're doing is hurting people, and it's getting out of hand." The man in the suit's expression darkened, but instead of lashing out, he took a step back. He seemed thoughtful, almost conflicted. "You think you know what's best?" the man in the suit asked, his voice low and menacing. "You think you can stand in judgment of this operation?" "You have no idea what's at stake here." The guard didn't flinch. "I know what's at stake, and I know what we're doing is wrong. We're not just controlling property. We're controlling lives, people's futures, and it's time to stop." For a moment, I thought the man in the suit would strike the guard, but instead, he seemed to contemplate the words. His face hardened, and he turned toward me. "This changes nothing," he said, "but it does give me pause. We'll see how this plays out, Mr. Harris, but don't think for a second that your resistance will make a difference." The tension in the room remained thick, but it had shifted. The man in the suit was rattled, even if only slightly, and that was a crack in their armor that I could exploit. "Thank you for the warning," I said, my voice steady. "But we both know it's not over yet." The man in the suit smirked again, his composure returning. "We'll see about that," he replied. "You're still our guest, Mr. Harris, and when the time comes, you'll choose wisely." As he turned and walked out of the room, I glanced at the guard. His eyes met mine, and for the briefest of moments, there was a silent understanding between us. He wasn't my ally not yet, but he was at least someone I could rely on, someone who might be willing to help. But as the door slammed shut behind the man in the suit, I knew the real battle was just beginning. The door to the room slammed shut behind me with a finality that echoed through the empty space. I stood there for a moment, my mind racing. The guard, the one who had stepped forward to speak up, had left me with a small sliver of hope, but it didn't make the situation any less dangerous. I knew that the man in the suit wasn't done with me. Far from it. This was far from over. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had an opening. The man in the suit had shown a crack in his armor. And cracks, however small, could be exploited. But I wasn't naive enough to think that the guard's brief moment of rebellion would suddenly turn the tide. If anything, it was only a signal that the real confrontation was on the horizon. The questions that had been haunting me from the beginning, why was the HOA so intent on controlling everything? What were they hiding? Were about to be answered. I couldn't afford to wait any longer. My wife was out there somewhere, and I had no idea what they were doing to her. I needed to act now. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as I paced back and forth, trying to come up with a plan. I had nothing but time to think, and the more I thought about everything that had happened, the clearer it became. The HOA wasn't just a group of people enforcing rules. They were orchestrating something much larger. And I had become an unwilling participant in their game. But I wasn't done yet. I knew the guards would return. They always did. But the question was, what would I do when they did? My heart pounded in my chest as I approached the window. It was small, too small to escape through, but big enough to give me a glimpse of the world outside. The faint light of dawn was beginning to break through the dark sky. The night had passed and a new day was beginning. But for me, it felt like a final countdown. I couldn't sit here and wait for them to come back for me. I needed information. I needed to find my wife. But I also needed to expose the truth. And that's when I heard it. A soft knock on the door. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. Could it be the guards coming back to move me again? Or was it someone else? Someone who was willing to help? The knock came again, softer this time, almost tentative. I approached the door cautiously, my mind racing. I couldn't afford to make a mistake. If this was a trap, I needed to be ready. I stood as quietly as I could, straining to hear any movement outside. And then, before I could act, the door cracked open just enough for a figure to slip inside. It was the guard, the one who had hesitated earlier. His face was a mixture of anxiety and resolve, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of humanity in someone working for the HOA. "Listen, you don't have much time," he whispered urgently, looking over his shoulder to make sure no one was listening. "They're coming for you. They think you're going to break, but I know you won't. You've got to get out of here, and you've got to move fast." I couldn't believe it. I had been trapped in this nightmare for so long, and now, finally, someone was offering me a chance to escape. I couldn't waste it. "I need to find my wife," I said quietly, my voice barely a whisper. "Where is she? What have they done to her?" The guard looked uncomfortable. He glanced down the hallway, as if making sure no one was nearby before he spoke again. "She's alive," he said, his voice tight. "But she's not well. They've been keeping her in another room, locked up. They know what she's been doing, and they're not happy about it. They're planning something big, and they're going to make an example of her if you don't cooperate." I felt a knot twist in my stomach. I didn't know how much longer my wife could hold out. I couldn't afford to wait. I had to act now. "Where is she?" I demanded. "Tell me where she is." The guard hesitated, then nodded toward the hallway. "She's being kept in the old storage room at the end of the hall. But you've got to hurry. Once they realize I'm helping you, they'll—" Before he could finish, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. My heart skipped a beat. "They're coming," the guard said urgently. "You need to go now. I'll hold them off as long as I can, but you don't have much time." I didn't need to be told twice. I bolted for the door, my heart racing. I didn't know how long I had, but I couldn't waste another second. I ran down the hallway, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The building seemed to stretch on forever, the walls closing in around me. My mind was focused on one thing, my wife. I had to find her. I had to get her out of here. I turned the corner and saw the old storage room at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. I could hear muffled voices from inside, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. There, sitting in the corner of the room, was my wife. She was pale, her face drawn with exhaustion, but she was alive. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a spark of recognition. "You're here," she whispered, her voice weak. "I knew you'd come for me." I rushed to her side, kneeling beside her. "We're getting out of here," I said, my voice shaking with relief and fear. "We're not letting them win." Her eyes softened, but the fear still lingered. "They're going to come for us. They won't let us go. We have to be ready." I nodded, determined. We didn't have much time. The guards were closing in, and this was our only chance. But I wasn't going to let them take her. Not now. Not ever. Together we would fight back. Together, we would expose the truth and bring down the corrupt organization that had tormented us and so many others for far too long. As I helped my wife to her feet, I could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on both of us. The sound of footsteps in the hallway was growing louder, and I knew we didn't have much time. The guard who had helped us would only be able to hold them off for so long. We had to move in fast. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper as I steadied her. Her face was pale, her body frail, but the spark of determination in her eyes was all I needed to see. She was strong. We both were. "I'm fine," she whispered back, though her voice trembled. "But we have to hurry. They know we're here." "They won't stop until we're gone," I nodded. "We're getting out of here, together. We're going to expose them, and we're going to make sure they can't hurt anyone else." The door to the storage room rattled as someone tried to force it open from the other side. We couldn't wait any longer. My wife, still weak, leaned on me for support as I guided her toward the window. It wasn't a perfect escape route, but it was the only option we had left. I quickly undid the lock on the window, pushing it open as quietly as I could. I could hear the pounding of boots just outside the door closer now. Too close. There was no turning back now. My wife and I were about to face the most dangerous moment of our lives. "On three," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos building around us. 1, 2, 3. We climbed out of the window, our feet hitting the ground with a soft thud. The air outside was cold, and the dark night felt like a heavy blanket over everything. But it didn't matter. We had to go now. We had to disappear before they found us. We ducked low, making our way toward the edge of the compound, staying close to the shadows. Every sound sent my heart into overdrive. I was terrified. We both were. But I wasn't about to let them win. Not now. Not ever. As we neared the fence that surrounded the compound, I turned to my wife. "Can you climb over this?" I asked, my voice full of urgency. She nodded, despite the exhaustion clearly visible on her face. "I can do it. Just get me over the top and I'll help you." I reached up, helping her climb to the top of the fence. As she straddled it, I pulled myself up beside her. Our hearts were pounding in sync, both of us feeling the pressure of time slipping away. Suddenly, the lights around the compound flickered on, and I heard the unmistakable sound of shouting. We were running out of time. "Go!" I urged her, pushing her over the top. She landed on the other side with a soft grunt, rolling to her feet and turning back to offer me her hand. I grabbed it, feeling a surge of relief as we both made it over the fence. The world outside the compound felt different. It felt freer, safer, but I knew it was only temporary. They would be looking for us. They would never stop hunting us until we were silenced, but we couldn't stop now. We couldn't let them win. We ran. We ran until we couldn't hear the shouts anymore, until the compound was just a distant blur in the night. And when we finally stopped, gasping for breath, I looked at my wife. "We're not done," I said, determination in my voice. "We have to expose them. We have to make sure no one else goes through this." She nodded, her eyes flashing with the same resolve. "We will. We won't stop until they're exposed for what they really are." We had escaped, but the fight was far from over. We knew the road ahead would be difficult. We knew the HOA wouldn't stop hunting us. But we had something they didn't. We had the truth, and the truth would always be our greatest weapon. Call to action. But this story doesn't end here. What we uncovered was just the beginning. HOA corruption is real, and it's happening in neighborhoods across the country. If you want to hear more shocking stories like this, stories of betrayal, corruption, and the fight for justice, make sure you subscribe to Listen HOA Stories. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on our latest videos. Share this video with your friends and family to help spread the word about what's really going on behind closed doors in your community. Do you have a story to tell? Drop it in the comments below, and you could be featured in one of our future episodes. Remember, Your voice matters. Together, we can expose the truth and fight back against the systems that try to silence us. Stay tuned, stay strong, and never forget, the truth always finds a way out.